So is this another example of the double standard for the elites? Let's talk about it now. We've got Gina Loudon and Kevin Paul Scott. Gina, you know, I made the observation earlier today on, I think it was Fox and Friends, that the media really took George Bush to task with Katrina. Obviously, this is not the same devastation, but it is something that we would expect a president to have said something about.
Absolutely. But see, Charles, I don't think this fits President Obama's narrative right now. He is a constant campaigner, as we've seen, and this isn't part of what he's trying to do right now. For him right now, it's all about dividing people up into groups so that the Democrats can get the votes in November. And this just doesn't bode very well for him in that case.
Kevin, he is a constant campaigner, but I have seen him take a lot of breaks for those vacations and golf outings. Not to have spoken out about this publicly, nor what we saw in Milwaukee. Just, again, you got to wonder, is he this sort of checking out here, or does he know he's going to get cover from the media?
Well, I don't know that he's going to get the cover this time, because it's amazing that he always seems to have time to weigh into the presidential election and all of the reasons why the Republican nominee is unfit to be president, but he doesn't seem to have the time to go and actually be president of the United States of America. And I think it's frustrating. And, you know, if I were in the Clinton camp, I'd be nudging him right now, because this does not help Democrats in general when the sitting Democrat president is just showing a real lack of care for something that's serious that's going on in our country.
Gina, I think it also underscores, though, the sort of indifference, you will, of the elite media. Well, you know, the Washington Post and the New York Times, so much so that they admitted it. That's rare. That was a mere mea culpa on their part.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask yourself, if it were one of the bigger coastal cities, if they'd be treating it the same way.
If it was San Francisco,
if it was San Francisco or L.A. or New York, if they'd be treating it the same way. But this all goes down to the conversation that we're having right now in the general population, and that is, we need a leader. We need somebody who's full-time. We're hearing now that Hillary's taking weekends off of campaigning. We have to ask ourselves the question, do we really want somebody who takes the office of the presidency as casually as this administration has, and as probably Hillary will follow suit?
Kevin, again, the waters have begun to recede. You know, that's when we start to see even more devastation. And I think this, to your point, probably will become a bigger story. How do you think it's going to be covered? Because usually when these kind of things happen, when a Republican is in office, the blame game is kicked off immediately.
Yeah, you know how it should be covered is telling the positive stories, because the negative story is what this administration is doing or not doing. But today, reading the news about Airbnb that's helping provide a platform for people to offer accommodations for free for flood victims, it's another example of how the private sector gets this right so much more often than government. And I hope those are the stories that come out of this, is how when the government is unwilling and not the best avenue to go and solve problems, that the private sector is stepping up and doing it. And I really hope that's the story that comes out of Louisiana, because it's a really tough situation.
Right, Gina? I think that's a great point.
Absolutely. And I think Taylor Swift giving $1 million of her own money, maybe other people will follow suit, but this is a great example of how the government doesn't have to look people in the eye. It doesn't have to really be there for people the way private sector charity does, and that's why government can't do everything for everybody, although this is their job.
Completely
they should
agree.
be doing
Thanks a lot, guys. Speaking of which, you don't want to miss Cavuto Coast to Coast tomorrow. I'm going to be hosting, and we're going to be talking more about this crisis in Louisiana with American Red Cross President and CEO Gail McGovern. You do not want to miss it. That's going to be tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern, right here on Fox News. Don't forget the breaking news of the night. Wall Street Journal reporting that $400 million in the Iranian prisoner swap looks more and more like it was indeed a ransom payment. The timing, the coincidence, hard to argue that that really was a coincidence. Lou Dobbs is next. You want to keep it right here on Fox Business for the very best on what impacts your wallet and your life. Good night.